talking with two folks who participated, I guess, organized and snapped some photos for a Black Lives Matter protest in Shawnee, Oklahoma. And I'll let you introduce yourselves.
All right, I'm Tyree York. This is pretty much something that's been a great thing that I've came together in my mind and put together, and to have the other fellow with me, Zoe. She's taken some time with me to try to better the community all at the same time and take that side. So it's been like major help. So I appreciate it.
And I'm Zoe Loeser. I actually just met Tyree at the walk on Saturday, but it's been fun thinking through, connecting him and these opportunities with other places in the community. So super glad to be here.
So for people who don't know, Shawnee is a little bit south of Oklahoma City, but more east of Oklahoma City.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you guys give us just a little bit of like, what's Shawnee like?
It's my understanding that Shawnee is actually a pretty rough place to be a Black person or person of color. We have a 4% Black population, which is mind-bogglingly low. But I also ran some numbers last night from the U.S. Census Bureau website using their microdata sample from 2018. And just to give people a picture, if you are white, now I will say too that this data sample lumps North Pottawatomie County, which is where Shawnee is, in with Logan and Lincoln counties. But Logan County has a 1% Black population, Logan County has an 8% Black population and Lincoln County has a 1% Black population. So it's not helping anybody out there. So the average property value, so if we're just looking kind of at, I think this really is a picture of systemic racism, things that are passed down from our parents. So the average property value for a white person in this sample data, I'll just go ahead and call that Shawnee. We'll just know that it's not entirely representative, but for the ease of things. For the average property value for someone living in Shawnee is $132,000. For a Black person living in Shawnee, it is $25,000. So that is someone owning property. That is what their property is worth.
That's a significant difference.
Yes. Yeah. If you are white in Oklahoma, that's $120,000. So ours is a little higher for white people. If you are Black in Oklahoma, it's $52,000. So it's a little lower. This next one is the one that is just kind of wrong. And I had to run extra numbers just to double check that I was doing this accurately. For all I can tell, I am. What I'm looking at says that the average income for a white person living in Shawnee is about $70,000. I think that's a little high, but what is definitely just wrong, not wrong because the numbers are wrong, but wrong because it's a huge issue, is that I'm showing that the average income for 12 months for a Black person living in Shawnee is $8,000.
That's like what you make as a waiter at $2.13 an hour, like part-time, right? Like that's insane.
I think that's what you're seeing. You don't see Black people in management positions. You don't see them on boards. You don't see them as executives. You don't see them. You see them owning their own businesses, but it's a struggle. And Tyree can speak to that personally, but it really is. I think this 8,000, I'm sure it's indicative of other things, but part of it is that you're right. It is restaurant level, working at fast food, trying to make ends meet. I think that's the picture that paints.
There's some definite inequality, some inequity going on there.
Yeah.
For sure. For me, like, I grew up in Shawnee my entire life, ever since I was 6 years old, and going through their schools, it was an even playing field, like in the high schools, and you had your white kids, you have your Black kids, like it was equal, but you could always tell the fine difference between going to the other side of the tracks of Shawnee and going to North Harrison. Like, there are kids like that live on Farrell, which is the south end of Shawnee, that haven't even seen much of north of Shawnee because they've never came out of that spot. Like, they don't even know of certain things that are on the other side of town. And that's the divide that we have to eliminate that, because it's creating the stereotypical thing in people's minds of, you see the statistics of everything, and that's the goal that we're trying to eliminate, that we should not have this divided in our own town. And as I talk with Shawnee PD, it's amazing that they're willing to cooperate and even help with this cause and everything that's going on. It's awesome, and that's really the main goal. But as a whole of the town, like, she's right, you can see within the numbers of the unemployment or the property value, as I was speaking of, there's a fine difference, and that has to be eliminated.
I was talking to a young woman, all of 14 years old, who organized a march in Woodward. And she was saying that their town is geographically segregated.
Yes.
And I live in Tulsa, and Tulsa is very geographically segregated and has been since before Oklahoma was a state, right? So it seems to be like, unfortunately, par for the course in Oklahoma. There are two sides. There's the tracks, and there's the other side of the tracks, and people don't typically cross those.
I think a really interesting video that I have watched on that is Austin Channing Brown is an anti-racist educator who has a series called The Next Question. And she interviews Nicole Hannah-Jones, who just won the Pulitzer Prize for her 1619 article work in the New York Times. And she talks specifically to segregated communities in the United States. So if someone wants I think that's a good primer. It was my primer. It's most of what I've learned.
It's good to hear that. If I want to make sure I'm understanding you correctly, Tyree, that the police in Shawnee are working with you and sort of supportive. I met the former police chaplain for Shawnee. I used to work with him, and he was a great guy, very equity-minded, very anti-racist, very, very, just a very great guy. So I'm glad that it's not just him, that the rest of the department seems to be assisting you. Could you talk more about that?
Man, this is just a normal day. I'm coming from school and I'm heading home, and I get a message from my mom that a lady from the PD is trying to connect with me and go over the next week for the rally. I was like, oh, well, okay. And I end up calling her. Her name's Vivian. I said, hey, I heard you want to connect. And she was like, yeah, when do you have time? I was like, well, I can be down there in an hour. So I just go from OKC to Shawnee and ended up meeting with them. And walking in there, it didn't seem like they were questioning what I was doing. This was something they are like, okay, so what is your plan? They were open to hear like what I was trying to do. And just that itself it speaks volume. Just to have that feeling from them and to be able to receive that it's amazing. And as we sat there and went over, just drew up a plan of where the march was going to take place and where we're going to end up, and have a sound system and set up a podium. Like, they were so engaged the entire time and willing to hear out my plan. So that was definitely an awesome thing.
Yeah, again, it mirrors the story from the young woman in Woodward. She said the police there were actually handing out water and providing like cool-off stations and working with them. And she's a young Latinx woman, so it was good to hear that Woodward, which has a very small Black population as well, was still supportive. Like, so what about the community? How has the community been? Like the community in and around Shawnee?
I've honestly met with some of the greatest people just within the past week. I've met with Travis Flood, who's running for commissioner. I've met with Ed Bolt, who is running for mayor, and just recently met with a downtown business owner, Jesse Ingram. He was wanting to converse just how he could contribute to the cause, because he felt as if he wasn't doing enough. And for me, that's how I've felt, and that's why I've taken this on, because if you look at the 18-year-old me, of course I'm angry about story after story that's been happening and going on, but I didn't have that mindset. I didn't have that depth to be able to know my true reaction and what I could do to help. And I believe God he's spoken to me during this time, and that's why I've taken this on. And I've seen just so many just faces that are willing to help in this community, and I've been seeing a lot of light here in Shawnee for the past week, and it's unexplainable, to be honest.
That's great. It's good to hear some good news. One more question for you, Tyree, then we'll bounce back over to Zoe. You're in school. Where you go, and what are you pursuing?
I'm going to crane operating school right now. It is my last week coming up. A lot of studying, and it's definitely a big week, and I know it's going to be stressful, but I know God wouldn't put this on me for any reason. He knew what I needed to do, and he's equipped me with everything that I've needed to be equipped with for this upcoming week. It's been challenging all while. It's been amazing all at the same time to be able to connect with these people, but there's pressure with it. There's definitely some pressure with it, and all I can do is just take that in and use it the best way I can, and in my day-to-day basis, and going to school and still keeping my mind on the things that I need to keep my mind on. And losing my uncle the past 2 days ago, it's been rough. Yeah, it's been rough, but I know he wouldn't want me to stop going and pursuing what I need to. So I'm keeping my drive going. I'm doing everything I need to keep that going. And it's not so much, I'm not feeling bad for myself, because I know that this world, this community, people need to hear everything, that people need to hear all voices. And that's just what I'm trying to make clear through this community, and to even reach the nation.
What I think is really neat about what Tyree's done is, I think for me personally, I was like, oh, well, we'll just join the OKC marches.
Mm-hmm.
That will be sufficient, right? That will be enough. And
Exactly.
And for Tyree to step up and say, like, oh no, we have work to do. We're just following this guy.
It does seem like there's been like a critical mass compared to past protests. Like when I see the images from Tulsa and Oklahoma City, and the pictures from Shawnee and Woodward and Claremore and Owasso, I think Ada even, I forget. Anyway, and from across the nation, there's, so many white fists in the air as well. So many, along with the black and brown fists. And there's, it's just such a broad, it's what America looks like, right? Like as far as our demographic makeup, like it's not, this has gone beyond just a black issue. Like it's blacks and whites and brown, everybody versus racism. It's not black versus white, or us. It's everybody versus racism.
Exactly.
And
for that first walk, it was majority white people that were marching with us out there. I mean, that just speaks for itself, how much support and how people really true care in this community. And there are some that don't, but that day was something that spoke major volume, and it brightened my eyes, and it showed me that, okay, this is not the final step. We have to do more. And at the end of the walk, we were in the parking lot. I'm just like, I get a question from a guy that I've grew up with here, and he's been my coach, Gary Frazier. He's like, so what's next? Like, what are you trying to do next? And I was like, man, honestly, I was thrown for a loop. I was like, I don't know. So I was
trying to make it through today.
Why don't we do another one? So I was like, all right, well, let's do another one. And I tried to rush it. It was going to be this Sunday. And I was like, well, I felt like it was too fast, and I needed time to take the right safety assurance and meet with people that I needed to make sure this was done right. So therefore I pushed it back to the 14th. So there could be more people that came, and it wasn't so, like I said, rushed in the beginning, and let it develop into something that would be so much more powerful for this community, and for so many more people to be able to join the movement.
And self-care is healthcare. You've got to look out for yourself, or I mean, you can only push so hard and be effective, right? So Zoe, what does allyship look like in Shawnee, Oklahoma?
Honestly, I'm just beginning that journey. What I will say is that I could live my whole life in Shawnee and not have to even think about racism. Assume I'm a good, not racist. Because like what Tyree said, I was looking at maps last night, and the whole north central and northeastern part of our community is where there are just no Black households in that community. So we are not going to be accidental allies. It's going to be a matter of first educating ourselves, obviously, and then from our education, doing the research and having those conversations with the people we need to have conversations with. Because as soon as you're like, I'm going to go change the world, you are, you turn into a white savior. And that's not what Tyree needs. That's not what our Dunbar Heights Association needs. They need allies, they need accomplices, but they don't need white saviors. So dismantling what white supremacy has taught us in terms of how to help, we have a lot of work to do. So I would say I think there's been a lot of beautiful conversation to come up out of our really awful current climate. The recent murders of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery. But there has been conversation, and I know that I'm taking steps as the leader in my tiny corner of the community, and I'm seeing others do the same. So I think as long as people are not being silent in this season, there will be good progress in the future. I have great hope for that.
So Tyree, how did the march come about? You're just sitting around one day and saw the news, like tell us the story.
I was just coming from my house, and I was just thinking, like, as I was driving, I was like, man, this is I have to take action. I've sat back for too long.
I'd have to stop you there and say it's funny to hear you you said you're 18?
I'm 21.
It's funny to hear you say as a 21-year-old, you've been doing nothing for too long. You haven't been alive enough to not do anything for too long.
I know.
Your point is taken. It's just funny to hear such a young person say, I've been doing nothing for too long.
It was a spirit that I felt came over me, and I felt as if back then, like I said, it's been trend after trend, and 2 weeks later, it just fade off. And even the Black community, our minds have been sunk into that relapse. It's been sunk into that constant motion of being used to lives being taken from us. And we have to realize as a whole that this cannot just be a trend. So as I'm driving, I'm like, okay, this is something I have to do. So I went to Old Dollar General and I got some signs, I got some markers, and I made a post on my Snapchat, made a post on Facebook that I was going to be meeting here. Everyone feel free. I'm going to be walking down Kickapoo for justice for our people, and nothing violent, just a peaceful walk. Not very many people commented. People liked the post and everything, but ended up just me going to pick up my little cousins and telling them to get dressed. Hey, this is what we're going to do. And they don't really understand what was going on in the world. I had to break down a few things to them of this is why we're doing this. And it started with just us six, just literally on Kickapoo, walking down, receiving honks, and also receiving glares as if, why are these kids out here doing this? It started with 6, and the next day grows to 45 people. Like that's a huge difference. And now looking at the interest in going on Facebook, I haven't looked today, but it's at 550. Like that's major growth, and it can only just keep growing. Just to see that in itself, it's insane, to be honest. Like I have no words for it. And honestly, I didn't know how much my voice was going to affect this community. And after that, I went home and I cried. I was like, man, I can't believe this. Like this is happening. From then on, it's truly taken off. I couldn't be more thankful to to witness these things in Shawnee. And I can't wait for next Sunday, because it's going to make history. It's going to make history in the town. It's going to make history just in the nation. It's going to be great.
You've done some important things. You've accomplished some pretty important things. Why did you make the decision to have one in Shawnee versus like going to Oklahoma City or, you know, a larger protest somewhere else?
Basically, it's kind of self-explanatory for itself, because OKC, they have held numerous protests and things as that. And honestly, living here, I've only lived here for 8 months, so it's not exactly my community. I know how Shawnee is just growing up there. I've seen the divide. I've seen numerous occasions of just how different it is in that town, the town that I grew up in, just to see that this town needs a voice. This town needs to take action, because it's been too long that we haven't. Sean, I don't think. I mean, if you guys, I don't think Shawnee's ever done anything like this. So I really wanted to take action in this, because this is my community. I grew up here. Right. These are where my loved ones are. This is where everyone is. And I wanted to take that up and be able to not only me come back and do it, but to grow, like to have other people join in with me, because that's even more powerful than just me. Because this is with just me, that's not going to happen. I need other people. I need voices along with me, because everyone matters. And it's been like, you hear people trying to change the narrative of all lives matter, and that is totally correct. That's 110% true. But all lives cannot matter until the Black Lives Matter. Yes. And everyone matters. That's just bottom line.
I forget who it was, but some guy was shouting down a BLM protest, and he was saying like, all lives matter, all lives matter.
Mm-hmm.
And the preacher walked over, or the priest walked over and said, look, yeah, all the bones in my body matter, but when my wrist is broken, the wrist matters the most. Like,
exactly.
You can't worry about your other bones while your wrist is broken. Mm-hmm. We as a society, like, not that we can't worry, we have to worry about all lives, but while Black lives are being taken from us unjustly so often, mm-hmm. Black lives matter, right?
Right.
Zoe, how did you come up to be part of the march?
And, social media is the big game changer in a lot of these things. But I just saw Tyree's event on social media and spread the word to some of our friends. And, you know, there's a level of concern about safety, and I just can imagine that there would be any concern in Shawnee, or that, you know, there's surely going to be a small enough group that we can space 6 feet apart. And, you know, there's all the things that kind of would check off the boxes to participate. And anyway, you just have to go. So yeah, that's how I went, and I invited friends, and it was a really good day. And I think, you know, we even there was one car that had a Confederate flag on the front of it, and it like honked at us and waved. And so like, that I witnessed that one, and I was like, I think they're a little confused about their symbols.
Yeah.
But and so, you know, my anti-racism journey started a little bit earlier than that, but that's how we're here. Again, I just largely assumed it was kind of going to lump in with Oklahoma City, but I don't know. I think Tyree has made a difference for a lot of us.
I think it's really important that it happened in Shawnee. Like,
I think so too.
For sure.
It's easy to roll into like a bigger city's
mm-hmm.
efforts and push, but like you said, Tyree, like they've got help. They've got people
mm-hmm.
that are doing it.
Yes.
Right.
It's important to bring the fight back to where your loved ones are. So Zoe, was there like an aha moment that sort of like, I guess, lit a fire, or just sort of was the final push to start the anti-racism journey, or I guess get more deeply involved?
Yeah. There wasn't any, so for me, there wasn't any kind of instigating event necessarily. I was reading Austin Channing Brown's I'm Still Here, because I know that anti-racism work is good to do. I recognize that I, you know, probably had my own whatever. But but largely feeling myself a good white person and la da da. But then I was reading I'm Still Here, and I just realized how white my world was. And I started seeing all white people in movies, and all white people in stock photos, and all white people on my bookshelf, and all white people in my podcast. And like, there were white people everywhere. And I think that recognition of how centered my life was around the white experience and the white narrative. It's that, I think it's David Foster Wallace, who is white. I think it's his quote of the fish saying to the other fish, like, how's the water? And the other fish saying, what water? And I saw the water. And from that point, I just started educating myself. So learning more about Austin Channing Brown's work, I discovered or was introduced to Andre Henry, who does a lot of movement work in anti-racism. Yeah, just it's the Maya Angelou quote, "Know better, do better," and I'm doing better now. This has certainly, well, I will say, before George Floyd was murdered, so the hacking of the Oklahoma City University graduation ceremony. So for our listeners who don't know, Oklahoma City University's commencement ceremony was hacked. And there was a racist slur written on the screen with a swastika. And I think that was, I'm an OCU alum. I was at the graduation ceremony for my cousin. And I think that was a huge inciting event that this is here too. And we've got work to do. And so I actually started I worked with some friends to start some reading groups of Me and White Supremacy by Layla Saad. I personally am a volunteer coordinator for a local nonprofit, and I have the audience to do a lot of systemic work in our community. So my hope is to help people recognize systems, just what makes a system, what is a system, how does a system work? It's not just something that we happen to do in life. It's something intentional, and usually it's intentionally racist. And so how do we recognize those systems I work in neighborhoods. How do we recognize those systems in our neighborhoods? And what tools do we have through listening to our neighbors to dismantle those systems? And that's long game work, but that's what I'm here for. I think if we're neighborhood by neighborhood, listening to our neighbors and working to dismantle the oppressive systems that are keeping them down, I'm really excited to see what Shawnee could be in a couple of years.
I'm excited about what Oklahoma could look like. Having talked to you guys now, after having talked to the young woman in Woodward, the future 21-year-old, 14-year-old. I'm not going to ask you your age. I'm not going to.
I'm 31. It's fine.
You're a young pup too.
Yeah.
I'm over 4 decades. But so many young people like taking the mantle and moving and pushing the needle forward. It's very exciting. Frederick Douglass is one of his famous quotes is "Power seeds nothing without a demand." So Tyree, what are you demanding something? What kind of changes are you looking for? What are you pushing for?
More than honestly demanding just the justice side, I want to demand, honestly, overall, just more love. Because that God is love. Love is, that's truly just everything. And to not have one white kid and one black kid feel like one is the majority and one is the minority, but for them to feel as if they are the same, which they are because they both bleed the same. They both put on their pants the same every single day. But just honestly, just to get out there that although the rioting, the looting, I get every single black person's anger in this country. I know what they're feeling. Like, I understand, but violent action only results in violent reaction. And as a nation, we all have to realize that. And we have to reassess our actions and apply ourselves in a different way, because doing it in violent ways it's not going to work. Like, that's obvious. Like, nothing's going to change. We won't be heard from that side of the anger. We have to apply our frustration from another side, so we are heard, doing it in a peaceful way. And that's what I want people to realize, that this has nothing to do, like, yes, we are angry, but we're doing it in a different way. We're applying it with love. We're applying it that we are needing help. And just as Christ, like he's went through the same struggles as us. And that's just, as a community, as a nation, as a people, that we just all have to realize. So I'm just demanding not only justice, but love.
That's a great demand. Switching gears a little bit, what's the craziest or the furthest away place you've heard from, or where is support coming?
Man, my girlfriend's over here. She's laughing because I've already told her. But I've actually had someone from Nigeria message me on Facebook Messenger, and they asked me if I have heard of a certain spiritual act that they do there. And I asked him to enlighten me, but I don't know if he read my message right, and I'm still waiting for that message to come back. But he asked me, I was like, no, I don't know what that is. So I've reached links all the way to Nigeria, and just that it's amazing, to be honest. And I can't fathom that the fact that so many people, that there's so much love in this world, that people do not realize that we do not have to go about things the way that we are. And once every voice is reached with love, then it's undefeated. Like we can't be defeated. Just the reach links from all the way from Nigeria, that's been insane. That's been the craziest thing. It's awesome.
Zoe, have you gotten any far-reaching emails or?
No, this guy from Tulsa reached out to me, and no, I think I haven't posted a lot actually about it. I think most of I'm actually super insecure right now because I'm reading about optical allyship, and I'm reading about white centering, and I'm reading about white saviorism. And like, even when you asked me to do this, and this is potentially optical allyship, whatever. Even when you asked me to do this, I reached out to Tyree, and I was like, this isn't mine. Like, this isn't my gig. Do you want me here? And he said yes. And I said, okay, well, sounds fun. So I'm in. Yeah, it's not, and it is my thing because I believe in it. But like, I want to be a good follower. I want to be a good listener. I want to be a good learner. Because like I said, I am the daughter of white supremacy. I am built up to know how to help the way that white supremacy knows how to help. And that can't be the case for me anymore. So no, I haven't. I mean, I think I don't know. I'm trying to I go back and forth about how loud I want to be about an NPR segment, even, but I think that's super cool. And I want you guys to be promoted as well. And I think that's, part of the issue with white silence too. So no, I have not received any messages from Nigeria to answer your question.
It wouldn't have been right just for me to be on here. Like, every voice counts. Every voice matters. So without Zoe, like, being on here, it'd just be me, but it wouldn't be as powerful because you have someone else from the other side seeing in from it, and who knows a lot about the segregation that we are going through. So like I said, it's much more like it's more powerful with more voices instead of just mine.
If we strive together, we thrive together.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I do believe that.
Has there been any like press coverage locally? Has anyone from the paper reached out or published photos or run stories?
Yeah. Shawnee News Star has. Did they talk to you, Tyree?
No, they
Okay.
I got the email from Ed Bolt of
okay.
I could message, but I didn't. But like, it was like a day or 2 days later that there was already a newsletter like in there about the Harrison Wall.
So our local Shawnee News Star did cover it. I reached out to Vicky Misa, who I have connections with through work, and just shot her some photos and some deets and told her she could reach out to Tyree. I think there was maybe actually one other article, but yeah, there has been some local coverage.
Awesome. That's great to hear. In Woodward, the young woman in Woodward had no response from the local press. Had just taken pictures and didn't speak to her at all. which was disappointing. Do you guys have any parting words? Anything before we wrap up? You just got to get off your chest or say?
I mean, ultimately, it's a huge week. I only ask for prayers and rest and guidance for all of us, because it's a big week. It's going to be a big day also. So just to fulfill everything that we need to for that day, and to stay focused, but also keep our minds at rest all at the same time.
Yeah, and thank you, Bracken, for bringing us little communities in. I know Shawnee's not, we're 30,000, but I think that is not dissimilar to Tyree saying like, no, this is valuable here, and this is a movement we need to do here. So thank you for going to the Woodwards and the Owassos and the Shawnees to bring voice to what's happening outside of the larger hubs.
I think it's not a rural versus urban versus suburban versus exurban. It's a national problem. They have to cover all of it.
Sure.
Why don't you give us a quick plug for the upcoming march?
Sunday, March. No, not March. It's March. It's a March.
It is a March.
June 14th, this coming Sunday at 3 p.m. in Shawnee. We'll all be gathering in front of the splash pad, which is downtown Shawnee, and walking down Broadway and then across down Main Street. And then there's going to be waters. There's going to be, I've had a lot of messages of like people, what can I do? Like, what can I bring? I was like, we're definitely going to need some waters, because there's going to be a lot of people. It's going to be a hot day, but it's going to be awesome. And all I want is everyone, any and everyone, to be there.
All right. Well, thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
That was a good interview. Thank you very much. For Focus Black Oklahoma, I'm Bracken Klar.